Tonight, we got a hot one for you. We are talking about co-parenting with believers. And to join us, we have a very, very special guest. Straight from Hot Program, it's my one black friend. Tonight on Black Freethinkers. All right. Speaking of co-parenting,
We're broadcasting, my love. We're broadcasting.
We have our first human baby on the show. So this is for all the people that didn't believe that he was co-parenting with the believer. In fact, for all the doubters.
It's okay.
For all the skeptics.
She was so quiet before we went on air. So quiet. But that's my little girl. There's no telling what you're going to get when she gets out of that crib. There's no telling. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. It's all good, man. So we are here. It was so tempting to do a hot program intro. And then I realized this is a hot program.
It's okay. You can still do a hot program style intro. And now,
no, I can't do airplane mode on Skeptic.
Oh, you can't do airplane mode. Okay.
Yeah, there's more rules and restrictions in place.
Well, fine. I'll introduce you, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a man who is in airplane mode, a man who needs no introduction. Pocket locker himself, Dr. James Bundy.
Yes. So just for the people that are watching along, we do host a show together called Hot Program every Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. But you are one of our first guests here on Black Freethinkers because I thought this would be an interesting conversation. So let the people know your current situation, just so they're kind of caught up as to why you're our guest of honor today.
Sure. I'm 52 years old, and I'm old for 52. This is mostly hair dye. Yeah, my wife doesn't like me saying that. I have been married for almost 1 year. First anniversary is coming up this December. My wife and I, we waited 3 years to be together, almost 3 years. Okay. Because she had to immigrate from another country. So rather than doing it the dangerous way, we did all the paperwork and spent all the money, yada, yada, yada. She's here. Mere days after we got married, she got worse. She got pregnant. We got pregnant. I don't know what the proper thing to say is.
Either is acceptable.
Either is acceptable. And last month, the tail end of last month, our baby girl was born. And according to our pediatrician, she's in the 98th percentile for both weight and height. So I don't think I have to pay for college, which is a relief. I think if welding, because I'm buying her a welder when she turns 11, if that doesn't work out for her, she's got Division I sports.
Oh, because of size. That's what they were saying.
Because size, yeah.
Okay.
I guarantee you, I'm lowering the rim as soon as she wants to shoot hoops. And I'm going to progressively raise it up. She's crying about that right now, but in the future, she might actually be excited. Yeah.
And your wife is, in fact, a believer.
My wife is a Christian, and she practices the Afro-Cuban religion. So there are some
Christian plus.
Wait, she started to chime in. I don't know if you heard. Sometimes. So so most of Cubans, according to her, So for someone who didn't want to be on the show, she's sure doing a good job of being on the show. My goodness. So yes, many Cubans practice this. I'll give you, for instance, it's important to my wife that our daughter be baptized. I'm 100% for it. I don't believe in God at all, but I love my wife. And she comes from a culture where there are rites of passage, and that's one of them as a parent. So for me, I see it more as looking after my wife than anything being done on the baby's behalf. She can't say that Jesus is Lord. She can't say her own name or tell me verbally when she's pooped. So I got to realize things, it's more important about my wife's care as far as that goes. We got married in a church. I don't think she really cared about that. We got married by one of our former neighbors who was a minister. They're Christian things that I want to make sure are honored. I've made an agreement with her before we got married. In a 5-week month, I will attend church a maximum of 3 times. In a 4 Sunday month, I should say, I will attend church at least twice if she wants to go. And we've rarely ever sat foot in a church because she's just not at that level of interest here in the United States yet. But if we probably were near a Spanish speaking church that was something she was into, she might want to go. And of course, I'd sit down beside her and not understand a darn thing for the entire duration of the ceremony at the church.
Yeah. So it sounds like in your case, there's a lot of willingness, like you're willing to participate in the culture, in the community, and that kind of makes, I guess, at least some of those decisions easier. Because I think or at least like when I've talked to people about, this upcoming episode, that's kind of people's first thing. So what do you do about, going to church or whatever? You're kind of in a position where she takes the lead on that. If she wants to go to church, you're fine going to church. Kid can go to church. That's all good.
I think I might be a unique person in that I enjoy being confrontational about my atheism. I enjoy discussing religion. So if I'm sitting there, and this happened when we went to my neighbor's church, he knew I was an atheist. He said to his whole congregation, he's an atheist, but he's still here. We're going to try to convert him. I enjoy that sort of sense of humor.
See, that's very interesting. That's a lot.
Well, here's why I enjoy that.
That's a lot.
Because he kept it casual. And in a way, think of it. He might have done me a favor. Instead of all these people walking up to me after church to try to talk to me about Jesus because I'm a visitor, nobody did. They all were more excited. They all were more excited that in a few weeks I was getting married at that church. And a few of the people from his service attended the wedding because we met them after, and they were quite fun people. He's got a lot of wonderful people there. So I took it as an opportunity to enjoy that. I'm well studied in the Bible. So if somebody's going to start bringing scriptures to me as why I should convert, it's probably not a good idea on their part, because I bring the goods. I've come to play, and I think for most Christians that I've met and had to discuss the Bible with, it doesn't end with them walking away with a clinched victory. Like, yeah, I know I'm going to win him over for Christ. It's more like, maybe we should read that Bible we have. And as you and I discussed on Hot Program, not if you want to stay faithful. Don't read it. Don't read it. Just enjoy your faith community. Keep paying your tithes so the lights stay on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Pay somebody's light bill once in a while, that sort of thing. Just be good. As what is it? One of the proverbs say, like, if you lend to the poor you've given money to God or lent to God or something like that.
That's a good one. Let's go with that.
Just
so two things
hands off the atheist.
So
Go
two
on.
things that came up there for me. One is I think a lot of people would have felt called out. Like if I'm gonna go to church, with my family, especially my significant other, I'm just trying to blend. I'm just trying to, be here. I don't necessarily want attention drawn to me, and I especially don't want attention drawn to the fact that I'm not really part of the club or whatever. So, I just think for a lot of people that would have been tough for them. Obviously not you, but, and then the other thing is y'all seem to have a real give and take, or almost like two compromises going on, because on one hand, you're willing to go and participate, but on the other hand, she's going to let you have conversations, because I think for a lot of people it would be, you can come, but
don't say anything. Don't say anything to these people, please.
Nothing. Please don't say anything to these people, please.
Yeah, I go to a Jewish wedding. I'm not seating you next to the rabbi. I know you want to sit next to the rabbi. No. All right. Well, we'll have a good time anyway. Yes, we will have a good time. Don't talk to the rabbi. I'm lucky. My wife certainly has her faith practice. I mentioned before our baby was born, we were driving to the hospital, and as part of her Afro-Cuban religion, we had to go to an intersection so she could throw an egg that, she told me this recently, I didn't know this, she had to rub it on her body, right? So she did that before we left home. I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
I drove her to an intersection and she threw the egg into the intersection so that the saints can bless our baby and her in the delivery.
Now here's I'd be worried about getting loitering.
Well,
no, that's not loiter. What is it? I don't know what it is. Littering. There you go.
But it's an egg. It's biodegradable.
It's fine. Yeah.
And we're out here in the LA County, like the tail end, the top of LA County. I can just imagine some sheriff's deputy saying, "You did this, why?" Sure. Yeah. And I would say in the Afro-Cuban religion, deputy goes, "In the what now?" Afro-Cuban religion. It's like Catholicism, only it's turned up to like 14 with stuff that you probably would be frightened of if you saw it in a movie, because it's just not your world. And if I just keep moving, I don't want to hear any more of this. I don't want to know about African and Cuban anything. Just let us know when you're barbecuing again and get going.
That's another very interesting thing, because I feel like one of the things that's become apparent to me is that part of what ritual a person can accept is typically what you kind of grow up in your culture, because those particular expressions seem normal to you. Like there's nothing less exotic about, a wafer turning into a body, or wine or grape juice turning into blood or something like that. But people they've heard that all the time since they were young. So like, yeah, communion, Jesus's body. Yeah, got it. Right. And then you hear something else and it just sounds very, very strange to us. But you're right. I think a lot of it is just due to not having the cultural exposure.
No, I was very lucky because I knew people growing up that had various religious backgrounds, and I was curious about it. Before college, I didn't do much exploring though. In college, I started to learn more about those other faiths. I grew up in Indiana, went to college there. After that, I moved to California in my early 20s, where I met even people from more religions. Like I think I might have met one person that I knew was Muslim back when I was in Indiana. Well, I met a lot of them here in California. I met Buddhists here. I went to a Thich Nhat Hanh retreat at his monastery, or I guess, I don't know, maybe it's not called a monastery, but I thought it was. And I think it's in the San Diego or La Jolla area or something like that here in California. And it was like a silent retreat. And, you know, I'm hanging out with monks preparing food. By the way, I so badly wanted to add some spices because the food we made, I used to work in restaurants. We made what had to be, if it could be, Guinness could have been called, like, is this not the blandest food you've ever tasted?
But that's part of the whole thing for them, right?
Is it? It
I think
was
so.
Pocket Locker. It might as well have been
because I think it's another
made for
I think it's
astronauts by NASA.
yeah, I think it's another like denial of the senses and denial of the indulgence of spice even. Yeah.
I would have loved to have said, guys, I brought some red hot sauce. So we can spice this up. I know you guys don't say amen, but this is one more thing for you to work into your gratitude practice here in the Sangha and have a lovely time with some hot sauce. But it was a really great experience to see how they had their faith. And there were people of various ethnicities there. It wasn't simply Asian people. When we finally could talk, I kind of wish we'd had more time to get to know these people and their backgrounds. I've gone to a Buddhist temple, and I went at a really weird time where they were honoring the founder. So I was there for like 2 or 3 weeks or something, weekends, excuse me. And so I really missed out on what is core to their practice. I went to an old neighbor of mine, a good friend. She was in a group of Buddhists that just did chanting. They would get together, have a brief discussion about something, and they would chant mantras. So I would go over there and hang out with them and chant with them. I never signed up for any of these religions because I had Christianity in the past. Most of what I learned about religions occurred as a non-believer.
So were you were a Christian at the time?
No, I've been an atheist. When I went to the Buddhist Sangha, I no longer believed in God at all. The Buddhist Sanghas, I no longer believed in God at all, of any kind. So in a way, I think that made it better for them and me because I wasn't trying to challenge them on what they believe. I could be a very interested spectator and really understand as best I could, right, as an outsider, why they were there, what they were there for, what it meant to them, and how it enriched their lives, right? I didn't see any miserable Buddhists. I didn't. I studied some people who were Koreans, and they studied the Gebyuk. Still got the book they gave me, and it was fascinating. But they were like pretty happy people, taught me how to sit properly Korean style and meditate. And, I've just had some really wonderful experiences. So my approach to religion and what makes it so easy for me, right, to be around people who are difficultly religious is that I take an anthropological approach. Here's my opportunity to learn about you, to ask you questions about your point of view, be very interested in you. And if you are a Christian and you challenge me, I actually have comebacks, right? For the person who is, let's say I sit with an imam, I don't know anything about Islam. So I would have to begin the process over of listening. And then I have to find out what the objections are. I have to find out if there are any inconsistencies. And I've heard Christopher Hitchens go on and on about that, but I've never read any of that for myself. And then get the answers, because as we learned from talking to Christians, you'll get 2 different answers if you ask 2 different Christians. And that's okay, because not everybody is going to know the same things. Not everybody's going to have the same understanding, and not everybody's going to have a comeback. Sometimes they'll just say, well, I don't really know. Or I don't understand that. I don't remember reading that. Or my favorite, that's not in the Bible. Oh, I can show it to you. So I think what helps you most, Pocket Locker, is that approach to take it anthropologically. With my wife, I'm fascinated at some of the things she tells me about her Afro-Cuban religious faith. When I was in Cuba, she would see somebody dressed in white. And that was often a person who was in their first year of the faith. And in that first year, there's a lot of things you don't have to do because people in the faith will be doing it for you, taking care of you so you could focus on your spiritual journey. I think stuff like that's wonderful. One of her friends had, I'm pretty sure it was a dead squirrel in this worship room in her house. So there's all these little like candles and incense because she would make offering to the saints. And there was like some kind of gourd, like dried gourd, and it had a representation. Like there's so many things that have meanings to them, right? They're meaningful, powerful meanings. And so my wife doesn't have those things. Even in her home, she didn't have those same things. So probably not unlike we see in Christianity, there are levels to how devout people are, or there are levels to how they practice. For all I know, when my wife was 9 years old, she had all those same things. And they were all the same meaning. But there comes a time, possibly, where you transition out of that, or you pass those things on to a new believer.
So, all right. So let me get some of the more, I guess, the more like challenging issues, because I think for a lot of people, so at least, all right. So I'll tell you my thing. My greatest hesitation is similar. Like it's more about the relationship than it is about the child per se. First of all, I don't have any kids, so I'm not parenting, co-parenting, and I'm not in a serious relationship. But even at the thought of dating or being in a serious relationship with a Christian, I don't worry so much about the difference in opinion or beliefs so much as I worry about, does there come a point where we're not on equal footing because you're being guided by a religious instinct, or Jesus is telling you something, God's telling you something, and now we're not having a conversation between partners, right? It's like there's my opinion and there's what God wants. and I'm not gonna fare well in this situation, right?
Yeah,
So
you're
I
not going to
think,
win that one.
yeah. So have you thought about this? Do you have any concerns, or do y'all have any way of navigating sort of an equity issue?
My wife before we were married, she thought, since I knew so much about religion, and I guess because of my approach, she said, I'm responsible for our daughter's religious education.
You are.
Yes. And I was like, fantastic. And I said, through no urging of my own, I know that little girl is going to grow up to be an atheist. She absolutely will grow up to be an atheist, because I'm going to say, hey, if we end up staying in California in this house, we live near a Sikh temple. We're going to go to the Sikh temple and meet people there. We're going to go to the Methodist church, to a Catholic church, to a Filipino church where they speak in Tagalog. And we're going to go to a Spanish speaking church. I'll take her to a synagogue, a Sangha, all these different experiences similar to ones I had, right? And
Right.
I'm going to, instead of telling her what to think, I'm going to ask her, what did you think, Victoria Marie? And she's going to tell me what she thinks. Now, there's bound to be friends that she'll make at these places, which is wonderful, but she'll know, hey, today we learned about this and this and this, and that was really fun, or that was really interesting. But I don't have any desire to tell her There is no God as far as I know. I haven't been presented with evidence that I find convincing enough to continue to believe. I once did believe. And if she
Right.
asked, why don't you anymore? I could talk to her about my journey into really seriously reading the Bible and realizing that this God of the Old Testament was not worthy of my praise, not even a little. And continuing on to Jesus and finding things out about Jesus, and he's not worthy of my praise. And I'll let her know it's a decision you have to make for you. I'm going to love you no matter what you decide. And if I see you joining a cult, I'm taking your mother and her gun, and we're going to rescue you out of there.
Well, see, all right, so that kind of gets at one of the other things that I thought about, because we have some other friends in the community that are also atheists that are married to believers. And, you know, I want to say it's interesting and it's not interesting. like in a sense, it's like, it's fascinating to me. Once in a while, there are interesting conversations that come up, or there's an interesting story that they share that's kind of related. So it's interesting in that regard, but in another sense, it's kind of not. It's in a sense, it just becomes two parents that make it work despite disagreeing about something important to them.
Yeah.
It's like a Chiefs fan and a Packers fan. It sounds like they're antithetical to each other, but trust me, there's literally probably thousands of couples that are, that do it. It's just, they just make it work. But I think for a lot of us, there are concerns. Like it's like, for me, even, like, it feels like it's more about the believer for me. Like, I feel like I had my heart broken by a believer, and it was sort of like I was in this place where I was like, I don't think it's a good idea for me to date a believer, because and then I was like trying, and I think, like, it was too much for them, right? Like, there's a lot of believers, like you said, there's levels to it. And I
Yeah.
think for a lot of them, there's definitely a level that they get to where they don't see non-believers as eligible. They're just not not really.
Yeah.
And so that's always going to be an issue.
I dated a woman, the woman I dated before I met my wife. I met my wife like 8 months later. She was fantastic. I can say she's probably perfect in every single way. Fantastic. Except we were incompatible. I don't care how perfect the person is, you might be incompatible.
Right.
She was a Christian. And I mean, she came with a cape, a Bible, she had powers. But again, a fantastic person. I gave her the same deal. Look, if we go on and we end up being a serious couple, in a 5 Sunday month, you get 3 Sundays. In a 4 Sunday month, you get 2. I'll sit beside you in church. Kid can get baptized, blah, 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 blah. Sunday school, the whole 9 yards. I am a visible participant, encouraging our children and you to learn. But she knew, I've read the Bible, and that's why I'm an atheist. She invited me. Well, we're having church online because of COVID. Will you go? Will you attend with me? I will. You will? I will, because we lived over an hour apart. So this was actually not a bad deal for either of us. So I would do that. And when they would break up into groups, she and I would be in the same group as often as we could be. And she could see I was serious about supporting her in it. But there came a time when I think she saw her fellow congregants kind of taking a shine to me, like, oh, he's pretty funny. He's got a good sense of humor. I wasn't challenging them on what they believe. I didn't feel that was my place. I didn't think it was appropriate. But they would ask me, different people would ask me, as an atheist, they would ask my point of view. And I think that bothered her. Because now I'm influencing her community in a way that she might not find positive. But I made it clear to her, I'm non-contentious.
Plus the association. It's like, it's almost in a sense, because knowledge is power in a community like that. And so people play it like it's all good on Sunday morning, but now she's associated with the atheist. When she shows up, they see you, they see her. She may not be ready for all that.
It's funny, Pocket Locker, you say that. I think it would have been different if we were in the same place and we were together. Being on a screen 60 miles away from her, I'm not sitting next to her with my arm around her or holding her hand. We didn't walk in together.
That's true.
It looks like Hollywood Squares on Zoom.
Yeah. That's true.
I'm in my little square. She's in her square, so she can feel supported. But it's okay. It's not the same.
Yeah, you're right.
For her, it's not the same. And so eventually she came to the conclusion, I don't think we should continue seeing each other. You're obviously a really great guy, and I wish you luck. So I had to give it serious thought. Like, how often am I going to run into this? Because I've dated other believers, but they weren't churchgoers very much. So as an atheist, I had, but they weren't really churchgoers. She loved going to church, and she had a wonderful group of people she went to church with.
So it sounds like almost like, I think one of their level of involvement is obviously then going to be one of the factors in, is it even possible for them to be in a relationship with a non-believer? If so, can they meet them in a sort of partnership? Because again, I've flirted with the idea, but when I talk to believers, that's what I'll tell them. Like, if you're the type of believer that could tell me you understand that when we make a decision together, we have to make that decision together. And even if God or Jesus does tell you what to do, you have to understand that may be God, but that's still only going to be 50% decision-making power in this particular equation. If you with somebody that really understands that, to me, you're addressing one of the real serious you're addressing the compatibility, right? You're saying, look, I'm not trying to change you. You're not trying to change me. Let's talk about when the rubber meets the road, we got to make tough choices. Are we going to be able to work together? Oh, okay, we are. Cool. Oh no, Jesus got to be king and Lord over everything. That would be a concern.
I think you'll rarely forgive me. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I think you'll rarely meet that person where they put Jesus above everything else.
That's a good point.
If I were to say to my wife, she's almost 38 years old. She's wanted children her whole life. We finally have one. My wife isn't going to, if I said to my wife, it's Jesus or the baby, pick one. You got to put one first. She's putting that baby first. Find me a mother of children that aren't teenagers that wouldn't. Show me one. They're out there, but you're probably not going to run into one.
What's interesting is like the one that broke my heart, that was the compatibility wasn't there, even though the chemistry was like you said, it was great, really. She was way more involved in the church, way more intense, and I would even say, like, I considered that congregation to be cultish. I don't even say that as an insult. Like, I really loved participating in that congregation, but they were about that life. Many of them had relocated for the mission in the church planting. they were really intensely involved in it. They thought God led them in their decision making. So, it definitely wasn't a person who's at a very intense level.
I
And
think
it
I
makes a
might have an
difference.
indicator for you, Pakalak. I think there's a sniff test to
What's the
see
sniff test?
the sniff test for that kind of person. Definitely, if you can, I encourage you to go to whoever in the audience, right? Go to church with that believer and don't let them introduce you as a non-believer. That's not why you're there. You're not there because you're a non-believer. You're there for them. And
Facts.
if at any time during the sermon, when the choir is singing, if they stand up and do this, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because that person, and I'm not poking fun. I know I say a lot of things in a funny way. That's just whatever. I did improv for years, but it's if they're doing this, we typically see people do this when they're babies and they want somebody to pick them up. We see them do that in church when they're trying to receive the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, when
Yeah.
they're in deep worship, maybe. And it doesn't take a
Yeah.
lot for some people. They just go there, and that's okay. But they're feeling it. They're truly feeling it. That's the wrong person for you. You need to start looking around the room for another dude doing this, and you put those two together. I think
Yeah.
you should talk to him over there. You do? Why?
It's
Because you had your spiritual.
it's so
You were
funny,
be
but that's
signal. You
how
need
I
to.
felt. That's how I felt so many times. And it would be funny too, because like when I would be talking to the women and the girls, and I would be like, I'd be thinking like you really need to be over there with the other boys that's really super into this church. But part of their churchiness was the young men and women didn't really talk to each other as much as they should. It was kind of sad. All right, but back to this whole parenting thing. So here comes the other thing. Like, what do you do when there's something that is really challenging? Because I think for a lot of us, going to service, baptisms, a lot of these things we're accustomed to, right? I think
Yeah.
maybe the issue comes in if there's something that feels wrong to us, feels immoral, feels like a real like a bridge too far that might be taken in the name of the religion. Um I think that's one of the other things I was thinking of is like that's
Sure.
yeah, I think people are kind of I think believe it or not, I think people in our community are of two minds. I think we have people in our community who would never even think about it. Like they won't know. Like they're like if you believe in God, swipe left. I've been there at periods. And then I think there are other people that feel like it might be a challenge, it might be an additional challenge, but if they meet
Can
the
be.
right person, they're not necessarily opposed to it.
In a marriage, pocket locker, or in a relationship, you're going to have challenges anyway. You
Yeah.
simply will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you could lose your job. You could. There could be an accident. You could lose your health partially,
Mm.
or just on a tremendous
You
extent.
didn't you didn't answer my question, but you kind of answered my question because what you just made me think of is it's not necessarily that the religion is doing something that you feel is a bridge too far. There's something you feel is a bridge too far, and that's a disagreement on the merits of whatever that thing is, and it's not necessarily about the church. Like,
Well, you're
go
making your
ahead.
sacrifice. You're making your sacrifice as a non-believer is to the other person in the relationship. Now, that's true if the other person in the relationship is a non-believer. And there may be a bridge too far in that relationship.
Right.
I've been in relationships in the past where women have told me, hey, if you want a side chick, it's okay with me. And two of them have said this. I said, that is unacceptable to me. And don't you ever say anything like that to me again. I'm not that guy. There are people who call me foolish for that, but I'm not that guy. And I said, I won't tolerate that from you either, because I can go and you can go. You're free to go.
Right. But
in order for me to stay, that's unacceptable from you or me. You know, some people physically need that. Some people mentally need that. I'm not one of those people. That for me is a bridge too far. If I was asked, hey, would you sell everything you have pretty much and move to another community? I don't think I ever would have had an issue doing that. But for some people, that is a bridge too far. My wife wants her mom to live with us at least part of the time while the baby is small. In this room, she was in my broadcasting studio. It ain't much, folks, but I'm like, nah. She can stay in the baby's room because the baby doesn't even stay there. But down here, it's 660 square feet. Her mother would have her own world down here. I'm like, no, I kind of want to rent that out again and get the money coming in again, because I miss having the disposable income.
Right.
So there are lines that will always have to be drawn. I've met couples that have been married for 50, 60 years. They didn't get there without crossing a bridge too far once or twice, probably. But they crossed that bridge together. Well, I know I don't want to say yes, but my partner will feels this is fulfilling and a direction we should go in. And that might be, I'm going to quit my job and start a company, right? I'll give you an instance that's church related. Maybe someone says, hey, I feel led by the Holy Spirit to donate $10,000 to the special contributions at the church.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So if my wife said that to me, I've already got Bishop Bullwinkle queued up in my mind. Hell to the no. To the no. Hell to the no. I'm not an ATM for God or Jesus. Now, if my wife said $50, $100, yes. If my wife says, can we buy food for families there? Yes. Can we get toys for tots? I've already done it. You want to get some more? You know, I'm going to be on board for certain things. But again, if it stresses the relationship, you have to talk about it.
So something
because your partner doesn't want to hurt you. Well, I'm just going to, in all likelihood, the person you've partnered up with does not want to hurt you. So they want to respect you.
Something that's come up in the chat is, you know, something like sin, like being taught that you have a sinful nature or something like that. How do you feel about those type of things that people might feel are problematic things to teach a child?
Okay, when we go to the root of the term sin, it's an archery term. It means to miss the mark. So maybe, and I'm going to quote Gary Habermas as I do on Hot Program. So if you're not used to watching Hot Program, you may have never heard me quote him. He's a Christian apologist who said the most wonderful thing about human nature. It is difficult for a man to live up to his own philosophy. If we read the biblical text, knowing that sin means to miss the mark, we can find instances of where the biblical God misses the mark. Ezekiel 20. I don't even need to tell you anything else. Where he says he gave the disobedient Hebrews laws and statutes to horrify them, rules they could not follow, even having them sacrifice their own children. Now, is that really necessary? Isn't that extreme?
So you think you would deconstruct the idea?
Oh, come on. If somebody's coming at me like that, they're going to lose.
So then
They're going to lose.
So then this has to be. So then, like I said, this has to go back to that mutual compromise where you have to say it's okay to take the kids to church, or I'll go to church. That's fine. But then she has to also say it's okay if you tell the kids you don't buy into that.
You know what? My daughter, who you saw, Pocket Locker, she's almost 3 weeks old. She hasn't made any mistakes yet, but she will. And when she's old enough to understand she's making a mistake, it's up to me to help her understand that, hey, mistakes like this can sometimes have consequences that will make you uncomfortable. If you steal something, we live in a system that will intentionally make you uncomfortable because they will incarcerate you. So whatever you wanted to enjoy, you will lose out on, right? You could have earned the money to pay for it in less time that you'll have to serve in jail, prison, and legal fees. So it's not worth stealing. It's not. You could have asked me or your mother to get it for you. You probably could have asked a stranger to buy it for you, and they would have, instead of going down that road of stealing. Some little kid at school, you don't like them, so you hit them. Why could that be wrong? Would you like somebody hitting you? You know, we have to have that talk, because people simply make mistakes, old, young. One of my neighbors, she's 89 years old, and she's diabetic, and she's got a heart condition. Her daughter doesn't like her doing certain things. My 89-year-old neighbor and we talk every week. And I always encourage her to live it up. You're 89 years old. I'd love to have you around another. She's the reason I married my wife. Like, I wouldn't have met my wife if I hadn't listened to my neighbor. So I try to encourage her to still at 89, figure out what living her best life is and doing that.
Now, one thing I'll say is interesting about your situation is I feel like a lot of times where Christians and atheists are married, they were both Christians when they got married.
That happens a lot.
Now one of them deconverted, and so they're but you like went into the marriage sort of knowing that you have this difference. Like, so it was clearly something that was not a deal breaker for y'all. It was not really a concern.
My wife says I'm perfect. My wife says I'm perfect, which is not the case. I'm not perfect. But with what my wife wanted in a man, when I showed up, I brought that with me. You know, I didn't have to put a mask on and become that. I simply was that way. She wasn't asking a whole lot as far as I'm concerned. And I just happened to tick those boxes, which is wonderful. She ticked the boxes for me too. And that's great. Now we're moving through life together, which is wonderful. If she had wanted a guy that was spiritual, she knew from the get-go, that's not me. It's not going to be me. I told a story. She doesn't necessarily care for me to tell this story, but you've already heard this, Pocket Locker. So for the rest of you, when my wife was still living in Cuba, we would occasionally get on the topic of something in the Bible. My wife says, hold on, I want to read you something. And she went and she grabbed her Bible and she opened it, and a group of pages fell out. Without missing a beat, I said to her, that's okay, Amor. It falls apart when I read it too. So she knows I'm irreverent when it comes to the Bible in some respects, right? I don't want to beat up on Christians. I don't mind beating up on the Bible, though. I have serious issues with the text. However, I can still say, look, if we like that proverb I talked about earlier about lending to the poor, right? I see that there's great wisdom in that. And if you can afford to give, then give it. The Bible even says that too. Jesus talks about it. If you loan somebody money, loan it thinking you'll never, with the mindset essentially that you'll never get it back.
Right, right.
And if they don't pay you back, you don't even be mad about it.
Because really, in any other case, you're creating debt for someone.
You're creating debt, and at that time, you could throw somebody into debtor's prison for that debt.
Right.
And think of what you're taking away from that person. You're robbing them of their freedom because they took money from you that they didn't pay back, which clearly, if you needed it, you wouldn't have given it to them.
Right, right.
If you truly needed it. So in a way, that's a good one, Jesus. Score one for Jesus. I'll put him on the board. But I don't give him credit for everything. He didn't say you can't own human beings. Sorry, no slavery for anybody who wants to be called a Christian.
The other thing I think is hard is that the believer is willing to give you influence in the religious education. I think that would be tough for a lot of believers. They would want things to be the opposite. Okay, I'm the believer. I'm taking the kids to church. I don't know. We need to. I wish I would see more streams about this.
Well, let's talk about that. My wife and I, as far as understanding what's in the Bible, we are not equally yoked. Not even close, to use a biblical term, equally yoked. I know far more than she does. She can stand her ground on some of the things that she says are in there, and I'll show me. And when she can't, it's still okay. It's not like I feel victory when I win an argument with her over what's in the Bible or what's not in the Bible. I don't. It's just, okay, well, you learned something today. I'm not even offended because she doesn't take it to the level of trying to offend me. We love each other too much for that, and we respect each other, so it doesn't come to that.
Yeah.
If my wife became super religious, and this happens to people, right? Because as the baby talks, she might feel, well, now I feel more responsible for the religious education, and I kind of want to take over, and I want to take her to church, and I want to do this, and I'm going to be fine with it 100%, because when my little girl comes home and she comes out to the garage because I'm working on my 66 Corvette hardtop. I don't have it yet, but I want one someday.
That's the car. That's the dream car.
I got lots of dream cars. I'm pathetic about dream cars. So she comes out to the garage, and I say, "Hi, sweetheart." Pick her up, give her a hug, and she's not too big to pick up. What did you learn in church today? And then she starts rolling blank tape because she doesn't know what she learned in church today. She doesn't have anything to say. Then I know she's not really paying attention. If she has a good life lesson, as is often taught in Sunday school, I may have things to reinforce the value of that lesson that are secular reasons, right? Here's why that's important, sweetheart, because in society, we live with people who are diverse. I've said, if I ever became president of the United States, when it was time for them to swear me in, I'd be sworn in with my hand on a copy of The Sneetches and Other Stories by Dr. Seuss. Because to me, The Sneetches is the best story ever written. There could be something better. Marcus Aurelius is pretty great, but he's not better than The Sneetches. He's not. There's wonderful things in the Bible, not better than The Sneetches. So the great lessons that she is to learn in her life can come from almost anywhere. And if I can teach her the value of that, then that's a victory for not just my daughter and myself, but for the world, because she's going to be a person who sees rightly, right? Who sees the right way of doing this task, the right way of treating this person or that type of person, or being fair or understanding or realizing she needs to be compassionate about people who have less than her. You can learn those lessons again. She can learn that at the drive-through when she sees a homeless person asking for change, and I give them change or a bottle of water or something like that, right? We don't know when those lessons are going to come. You almost can't plan for it. But what I can do as a non-believing in God Father is respond to my child and nurture her and teach her how to do the same. She's got to take care of herself, but there's times where she's going to be able to take care of other people without harming herself or losing out on anything. And I think we can agree that's a good thing for her to know.
Yeah, it is. So it sounds like you're at least not overly concerned with exposure to the ideas themselves. You think
and as a sarcastic human being, Pocket Locker, I'm looking forward to it. Here's why. Dad, did you know about Noah's Ark? My dear, I have heard the story about Noah's Ark. What can you tell me? Maybe I forgot something. Well, Noah was this old man. How old was he? He was like 500 years old. How many other 500 people, 500-year-old people do you know? I know Emma. Emma is not 500 years old.
Right.
You know. Well, what else about this? Well, the boat was this. He was so big. So the boat was the size of a high school football stadium. Yeah, and it was made out of wood. Yeah, you think that's structurally sound? I don't know. Okay. What else about this boat? He had all these animals on it. Like, we've been to the zoo together. Do you think all those animals are going to fit on a boat like that? Well, the book says they would. What about the food? Didn't they have to take the food with them? Yes. Do you know how much an elephant eats? If we could sit down and work it out so she could see the story can't be true. And I can say to her, well, if the story is something called a parable, it's a story with lessons about living and maybe working together or understanding something that are supposed to teach us how to deal with our day-to-day lives. She'll understand that. And then I can ask her, what did you get out of the story? Knowing that it's just a story, what's the meaning of the story as far as you know? And allow her to tell me what she internalized from the story. If she internalized something good from something bad, right? I'll tell you what, I can eat a blueberry muffin. The blueberries are probably the thing that has the most nutrition in the muffins. And there's probably still a little left after it's all baked. But really, my body could have done without the flour and the salt, right? It could have done without that. It could have done without the sugar. But there's something good. So if my daughter is just keeping the blueberries, then we're doing pretty well. And having the whole Noah story will help her preserve that in a context that she can use later when the situations pop up in her life. The people didn't listen to Noah. They didn't want to repent. Well, if people don't want to listen to her and she's speaking some good sense to them, maybe she shouldn't waste her time on them and just go back to what she's trying to do.
So let me ask you about the sort of flip side. Do you think there's any concerns from, I guess, your wife's perspective about raising a child with a non-believer? Because I think sort of related to that earlier conversation about like there being levels, it seems like if you're a believer and you're with somebody who's a non-believer and you think they're gonna give your child a good education and get them critical thinking and maybe they don't believe, that's fine. But I think if it's something to where you think your partner is going to be the reason your child goes to hell or something like that, it's almost like you got to be with somebody that's not going to take it that far or something.
In a way, you do, Pocket Locker, because would you want to be with someone who thought even, and maybe this is a good question, right? I'd never asked my wife this question. Do you think I'm going to hell? One of the most powerful things ever said to me when I believed in God, when I was a Christian, was by my friend Amanda, who's Jewish. And she wouldn't let me sit by the rabbi at her wedding. When she asked me if I thought she was going to hell, Amanda is one of the most intelligent, loving, absolutely wonderful people I know. And if God is sending her to hell, he is unjust by all standards, except for his own. I could not, if I were in heaven and I could look down and see Amanda in hell, I'm finding every SEAL Team 6 member I can that's in heaven, and we're going to get her.
Yeah, I think a lot of them say no. It's just a question of how they resolve it from there, I guess.
In a way, it's their fight. What you can do is be the best you, the best version of your true self. And you can be supportive of them in everything except for the hell business. So if we read the book of Enoch, which is cited by the biblical text in several places, Enoch is referred to in the biblical text as well. Hell is supposed to be located in the desert of Dudaim. That's a real place you can find on Google Maps. The entrance to hell is supposed to be there. We have a physical location we can look, right? If we scour Dudaim, we're not going to find it.
Right.
When the ancients theorized of a hell that had an eternal fire and sulfur lake, and it was in the center of the earth or under the earth, they probably didn't understand plate tectonics, how volcanoes work, where lava comes from, a molten core in the planet. They probably didn't have that understanding. And so for them, a way to explain it was simply that. I would say if you're dealing with a believer and you love them and they think you're going to hell, there's something you ought to listen to. Go on a YouTube, type in PHEDO, Fido. It's a play about Socrates telling a story of Phaedo, and it's about his death, Socrates' death. It takes place just before that and during that. It is, you can find a version read by a man named Bob Neufeld. He does an excellent job. He's the only guy reading it. There aren't multiple voices. There's just his own. And he talks about the afterlife where people go into a lake of fire. Like you sort of travel along, you end up in this lake of fire. And you stay there until the people who are on the shores of that lake that you wronged forgive you. When they forgive you, you can come on out from your suffering. That is a much better system than the God of the Bible picking and choosing who goes to his heaven. Why? Because how can I, a simple person, offend? Well, I could offend God. I'm on an atheist talk show. But the average person who doesn't have an atheist talk show, how do they truly offend an infinite, all-powerful, all-knowing being? Really, how could that being be that petty? But what we know we do here on earth is we hurt each other. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Listen with your partner to him read the whole thing. And if that person, I think that's enough to deconvert people to hear that story. Because there's a lot of Socratic method, asking questions to get the person to understand their own point of view and maybe even yours. It's fantastic. And that's what we need to do when we enter a relationship with a non-believer. I mean, with a believer, we have to get them to understand where we're coming from almost through our own eyes. And I think that helps my wife leave it alone. She can hear me quote scripture. I can do it better than her. I can give her chapter and verse a few times, but typically I can flip to it and look it up. She knows there's no competing with me on that. Well, if I've done all that study, if I spent more than 17 years looking into this and I don't believe, maybe I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm pretty sure of it. And I find that most believers are sort of aware that they're woefully unequipped for those conversations, but it's just interesting, sort of the willingness to concede enough to make a relationship with a non-believer work. I really do. I hate to say this, but in some sense, I really put it on them. Like when I think thoughts about being in a relationship with a believer or co-parenting with a believer, my first thought is it depends on the believer. You know,
does.
and
Right.
it just depends on the believer. And I hate to say it, but it's like, oh, someone that's not that serious about it, I think stands a much better chance of it being compatible the more and more serious they get. You know, because again, like a person who's going to hit you with the unequally yoked, you know, if they're serious about that's going to be a problem. And especially because for most of them, they only see that can only be resolved in one direction. It can only be resolved in you converting to Christianity. You know, it's never gonna.
So what you folks don't know is one of my first conversations with Pocket Locker, he brought up that he had you I don't know if you remember, you brought up that you had been seeing someone who was a believer and things weren't really working.
Yeah, there's a problem.
And I said, I have scriptures for that. And I pulled one up on my screen here. 1 Corinthians 7:4. For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife. The unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her husband.
Yeah. But
and otherwise your children would be unclean. But as it is, they are holy. Yeah. Thanks,
but see, I think it's so weird because I feel like they go to the unequally yoked instead of that. Like, why not go there? It's
because
weird.
it's more memorable. It's more memorable. Another reason could be simply they want out. but look, now think about this. Sure. Think about this. If I'm the leader of a church and I understand after going through seminary, I'm probably a borderline atheist myself after I go through seminary and I learn all this stuff that they don't print, or excuse me, the stuff that's in the back of the Bible that you don't read after reading the Bible. You know, where they give you the history and they basically tell you in the footnotes, like, yeah, this came in the 3rd century, or we only have one text that has this in it, or there's only one manuscript. You know, when you learn like how thin some of the evidence is, right? Or that it isn't really evidence, you know, Matthew didn't write Matthew, Luke didn't write Luke, Mark didn't write Mark, blah, 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 blah. Once you know these things, you realize how delicate faith can be. But at the same time, you realize how wonderful faith can be. There are people who think the world would be better off if we were all Christians. There are people who think we would be better off if there were no religion at all. So we have to understand there's a spectrum. So that minister up there talking to his congregation, if he read this to his congregation, it gives them a chance to hook up with a non-believer.
Yes. Yeah. So he's not going to mention that.
And if the non-believers are on my level, look out.
Yeah.
You can't quote scripture to them. You can't. I've got a counter for almost anything you say. I got a counter for it. That's out of the same book, right? It's out of the same Bible, which is an anthology. I got it. Just go ahead. Bring it on. And they know that can be problematic and cause that person to fall away from the faith. So they're not going to bring this up. It's not useful. But the not being equally yoked, it's succinct.
That's definitely useful.
It's easy to understand, and it keeps them bound in the faith. It anchors them, if you don't like the term bound, it anchors them in their faith, knowing this is a church with 3/4 women and 1/4 men. I'm bound to find a man in here someday. Somebody's gonna walk in the door one day. But what we often see is there are more women than men in church.
Yeah, definitely.
Because women, they're nurturers. And I think a lot of the gospel message is nurturing. Proverbs, it's about management. It's also about nurturing.
I think it's both ways. I just think everybody is conditioned to go to church to find a mate, to find a good mate. When you get serious, it's like you can meet somebody at the club, you can meet somebody at the bar, but if you want to meet a good person and get serious, there's so much of that you need to go to church. And so when people get serious and they want to settle down, they're like, I better go to church.
Look, if you ride motorcycles, look for somebody in the motorcycle club. Look for somebody you have a common interest.
Yeah,
if you love archery, go ahead.
No, sorry, Maya was just pointing out that weddings aren't always in a church. Technically they're legal contracts, so you could do it in the courthouse.
Yes, you can.
Got to go to the courthouse at some point anyway.
If you live in Indiana, I think it's still you're allowed to get married in the state courthouse. Some friends of mine did, and it was on a Saturday. State courthouse. The building is superbly beautiful, just beautiful, and we had it all to ourselves. There were about 44 of us in there, and it was a wonderful time. You probably couldn't find someplace prettier other than a Japanese garden somewhere. And so that may be available to you, municipal buildings that are owned by the city or county, or state. Libraries might be especially beautiful. You probably could get married in those places. So just be willing to be creative. It doesn't have to be a church, no. If you met at a bar, you probably could get married in that bar. They'd probably love that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, definitely.
So
you could get married and gather if you meet online.
You could have an 8-bit wedding or 16. I don't know how many bits it is, but talk about doing it on the cheap. I think some advice I was given and advice that I give: meet someone if you're looking for someone doing the things you love doing, because at least you'll have that in common. If you like bowling, if you like movies, if you like archery, motorcycles, crochet circles, whatever, you name it. If you like to go to the beach, look for someone at the beach. They're probably half naked and you know what they look like. So, almost naked. So you know what you're getting. Especially if they come out of the water, you know what you got. So, keep that in mind. It took me a long time to find my wife. I dated a lot. And as a non-believer, I was very open about being a non-believer, but at the same time, I'm someone who is so open-minded about the believer keeping their options open in terms of whether they believe or not. That's not up to me. That's not a decision I want to consciously influence through anything I do. Now, that makes me very hands-off. I would say if you are a person who can't do the same, then look for another non-believer or someone who isn't a Christian, right? They could be a Buddhist, where they don't even care that you don't believe in Buddhism.
So you think there's like an individual tolerance for it? Because you're not in a position where I'm trying to deal with that myself. Like I'm trying to be more hands. It's hard. It's hard for me because I'm trying to balance that with being honest. And I think when I'm honest, a lot of times it comes out like aggressive, even if I don't necessarily want it to be aggressive.
Name a restaurant that you like to go to. Yeah, I know you moved recently. Is there a restaurant in that area that you enjoy going to?
Yeah, it's like Sabor or something. I can't think of it. It's like
all
a
right,
Brazilian
so
steakhouse.
Let's just say Sabor, okay? You enjoy going to Sabor. You can afford it. The service is good. The food is amazing. if you became a billionaire tomorrow, you could eat at Sabor every day, but you wouldn't. You probably wouldn't. But you just know Sabor, Sabor, Sabor. I love it. I love it. Sabor is one of many restaurants. If you never go to another one, you won't know how good it is other places. If all you do is, oh, she's a Christian. Oh, she's a Christian. Oh, another Christian. Oh, another Christian. We got millions of them, Pocket Locker. But we have billions of them. We have billions who are not Christian. Right? You may not want someone who is a Muslim. Why? Because they have standards that are similar to Judaism or Christianity. You may not want a Jewish person. Why? Because if she is practicing, there are going to be things that you don't really want to get into that. We're back in the Bible. I don't really want to do that. But if she is a Sikh, or Sikh, she has a particular style of dress that she may adhere to. And beyond that, you might not object with a single thing. They're generally pacifists. So she's not going to be a warmonger. She's going to be very careful and probably very delicate about the way she does certain things, even the way she treats you. You might find a Buddhist who's very open-minded, is very inwardly focused, and at the same time wants to make a small impact on the world and sort of treads lightly through life and will treat you the same way, wanting to honor you, respect you. You got to look culturally too. What about one of these cultures where women are very submissive? They put the man first, blah, 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 blah. There, if you're looking like that, you might find someone more in tune than someone who is a Christian.
I can't find what I need. I need like the radical leftist atheist, like commie. Where are they at? I live in New Jersey, and it's like
the radical leftist atheist communist.
Yeah.
All of that.
Not in New Jersey. It's tough. It's tough.
Well, don't look in New Jersey. I don't know where you're gonna find that. But you know what? No, I do. No, I think I do.
New York.
Eastern Europe.
New York City.
Eastern Europe.
There's a lot of Eastern Europe people in New York City. I'm not going to Eastern Europe.
One of my best friends in the whole wide world lives in New York City. But I don't think Tam is an atheist yet. But you know how there's like different gradations of Christians.
I'm free. I just broke up with Anna Kasparian.
I think, huh?
I just broke up with Anna Kasparian, so I'm free.
Okay. Well, she's of Armenian descent, if I remember right.
Yeah, but she just left the left. She's an enlightened centrist now, so I had to let her go.
A lot of Armenians are very religious people.
I had to let her go.
Okay. Well, what I do encourage everyone who's single to do, I had my brother do this, I've done this, is sit down, make a list of all the qualities you want in the person you see, right? Your ideal mate. Make a list of all the qualities. And I usually tell people, I've done this with several people, try to get to 23. There probably aren't 23. You might stop. It's a lot. You might stop around 14 or 15. I can stop
at like 6.
That's probably not true. But you can say that to me now. But try it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it and see what I come up with. But I feel like I can stop it. I feel like there's not. The funny thing is, you were good to co-host this because you're actually co-parenting with a believer. I'm not good at co-hosting this because my first right on my list is like doesn't want children. So that co-parenting is right out the window. But Pocket Locker, there are a lot of people who don't want children. No, I know. I'm just saying I'm not going to be very good at talking about co-parenting. I don't have any children.
Well, but that's okay because you can ask questions. You're still doing a fine job. Don't think that you aren't. Plus, our audience is free as far as I'm concerned. You certainly all are encouraged to ask questions. I'm happy to answer them. I don't know everything, but I am having an experience here, and I've had plenty of dating experiences with believers of various gradations of belief, and I've had theist girlfriends, Christian girlfriends. I've never had an atheist girlfriend. That would have been interesting. But there are people out there whose faith is so casual. I'm reminded of my ex-girlfriend, my ex-fiance, Amy, where she said she's from Georgia, like the country of Georgia, not United States.
Yeah.
We were talking about religion. She says we have 10 rules. So she's referring to the 10 commandments. Christianity to her was essentially that. I'm like, shoot, you can put that on the back of a business card, even in Cartulot, their language. There's not much to it. If that's all you want to believe, but there's so much more to it than that. But not for her.
But I don't want to. No, that's good if they don't want to get more into it.
Well, just keep in mind.
I need a cultural.
If you date a communist, if you date a communist and they look at you like you're the only source of income, because that pocket lager owns the means of production.
This is slander.
And, she's not going to do anything to help you out. You got the wrong lady there, buddy.
There's hot program.
As far as I know, hot program doesn't make $30 a year.
Seriously. All right, look, y'all, let's get up out of here. This has been fun. Thank you so much for joining us, my one black friend. We had to have you back.
Oh, you're very welcome. A pleasure.
To talk about some of the other things, some of the straight counter apologetics and other things that we do on this show. But yeah, I thought of you. I thought this was a fun one.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the thoughts I was having is I honestly do think it's still hard for most non-believers to find other non-believers. Like it's not trivial. I think I've seen some people, I think online has helped a lot. I think there's a lot of people who have been able to find somebody online and maybe they wouldn't have otherwise, but it's a tough deal. It's a tough deal. It's not easy.
It can be, and I don't know pocket locker. I'm unwilling to say that a non-believer needs another non-believer. Some do. There's a certain percentage. There's a certain percentage of us. Yeah. That's the only way it's going to work, because they don't even want to hear about Jesus this, Jesus that. They don't want to pray at Thanksgiving or anything like. They don't want to be around all that. They can't countenance it.
Right.
But I think for most people, you can be quite happy with a believer. I'm serious when I say this, pocket locker. Go to a Buddhist temple. Go to a Buddhist temple and just explore. Not you're looking for a girlfriend. When I went to the Buddhist temple, not the retreat, the Buddhist temple, one of the first things I was asked after this group of people wanted to know my name, where did I come from in terms of like, oh, where did you travel here from? Which was like 60 or 80 miles away. The next question I got was, are you married? You know who he'd be good with? And then they started having this conversation about me, them picking out a lady for me as I was standing right there. What kind of women do you like? What are you looking for? This is my first day there.
Y'all got nymphos around here?
You know what? I didn't bring it up, but I didn't bring it up. I was so impressed that they were taking it upon themselves to find me a woman. We're going to help you find your ideal mate. Like, well, Asian women are hot, in my opinion.
Well, you have
But that's my challenge to you, pocket locker. Somewhere in New Jersey, near where you are, is a Buddhist temple. Find out when they meet and go there. Go there. Go there 3 times.
Get me. We call it an international incident. All right. Let me take care of the Skeptic Haven business. All right. We want to make sure we thank our patrons: Paul Camish, Helen Greene, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Ozols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. And don't forget to check out our other shows on Skeptic Haven. Mondays is the Black Freethinkers. Thursdays is the Sunny Spot. Saturday is the Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload. And Let's Talk on Sundays. Thank you so much, my one black friend.
You're welcome.
Definitely give us a subscribe to either my channel, his channel, or the Hot Program channel. And you can check us out on Sundays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And otherwise, be good to yourselves.
And each other.
All right. We'll see you next time, gang.
See you next time.
I'm gone.